tuned for another original Studio B production right here on the Voice17104.com.
Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to the Richard James Show on 17104, The Voice. Away in a manger, no crib for his bed, the little Lord Jesus laid down his sweet head. The stars up above him that looked down where he lay. The little Lord Jesus lay sleeping in the hay. Bless you, my friends. Welcome again to the Richard James Show. Welcome again to my journey, our journey, in dealing with this struggle called life in America. I started a video with an interview that my youngest daughter, Maria James Child, produced an interview of myself and activities during the 60s in terms of art and civil rights. And I want to continue that journey. And what I'm going to do today, first of all, I'm going to do sort of an introduction. One of the most prominent individuals, if not the most prominent historian that we have in the Harrisburg community, is a gentleman by the name of Caleb Jackson. And when last I talked with Caleb, I know he was 89 years old, going on 90 years old, and just as sharp and just as brilliant as he ever was. And we taped the show almost nearly a year ago, and dealing with the historical things that are happening within the city of Harrisburg. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play that video of some portions of that show, because we want to talk history today and talking about a journey. And after that, I'm going to play a video that, as I said, was produced by Maria Consuela James Child, my daughter, and interviewing me, just taking a look-see at artists and other individual activists during this whole struggle for freedom and justice and equality. So it's going to be a journey. I had the honor and the privilege of getting to know and being a friend of Caleb Jackson. I've learned so much from this gentleman. It's just absolutely unbelievable. And you will too. So I think it's worth repeating. It's worth telling the story. Now, before we get into it, I want to just say something. This Saturday on December 11th, I think it was Life of Seaman and Writers Workshop, Pat Gaskin and Reverend Dr. Nathaniel Gaskin again put on their annual Kwanzaa celebration. I haven't been in a number of years. I attended that celebration. And let me tell you something. My hats are off to both of them. They worked from early in the morning to night to make that a success, and God knows it was a success. It was probably one of the best attended Kwanzaa celebration that I've ever been to. But for me, it clarified exactly just how important these two individuals, husband and wife, are to this community. I saw individuals from different organizations, different positions that were there. And the blessing is for me, I saw friends that I hadn't seen in years. And I came as a vendor. I came there with my African art, my African drums, And we were very successful that day. I have to say it right on. It was a tremendous success, but it also brought great joy to my heart. And they have a tradition in which they ask the oldest one in the audience to lift up, prevent some certain activities to happen. And guess who was the oldest person in the audience? I guess it was me. I think the youngest next to me was like 73. And of course, I just turned 80. So that makes me the oldest. So that was interesting. But you know, it's a true blessing to be 80 and alive and functioning, able to drive, able to run a business, able to do a broadcast. And, you know, we're not here forever. We're not here forever. We're only here for a period of time. And Governor Casey used to say, what did you do with your life when you had a chance to do it? What did you do with your life when you had a chance to do it? Well, we did a lot over the years. And we think it was truly a blessing. So again, I want to lift up and I want to thank Reverend Dr. Nathaniel Gaskin and his wonderful, very talented and brilliant wife for putting on a wonderful occasion and allowing myself to come in. My wife was there. My wife is president of the Link organization, or I guess sorority, I guess it is an African American female organization. And they were promoting some of their individual projects. So it was a family affair for us. And then my daughter, made presentations at the affair. So thank you. Thank you, Reverend Gaskin. And I'm going to be talking with you because I like for us to do something that we used to do quite often years ago. And we used to read poetry together. You established the Writers' Workshop, which I think is a wonderful thing. And years ago, back in the 50s, I established an organization called the Taraji Tribe. And we had Black Workshop. And we had a television show that was on Gerard cable station years ago. And that concept of having a workshop, you have lifted up and made it a reality. I've been there when you have brought some of the greatest writers and poetries of all time to Harrisburg, and many other people who are now published authors, who are now poets, who are doing a lot of things, got their encouragement as well as some of their training at the Writers' Workshop. I used to attend the Writers' Workshop for years and years. So thanks again. It was a wonderful time. I enjoyed it immensely. And I look forward to coming next year and the year after that, if possible, to participate in such a wonderful affair. Now back to history. What has Harrisburg contributed to the history of our people, or to history period? Harrisburg, the capital of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, has contributed a lot. And we've had to deal with racism and discrimination in Harrisburg. At the same time, in trying to build a community, we've had historical figures that have gone on to glory. Billy Gray, to name a few. Billy Gray was a professional boxer, trained with Sugar Ray Robinson, and also had a boxing camp here in Harrisburg. I had a boxing camp. I used to box years and years ago and worked with Billy Gray, one of the individuals. But there were many. Paul Waters, for example, who was also gone away to glory. There are many people that have contributed to this community. So we're going to deal with that. Not just my history, which was very brief here in Harrisburg. Well, I can't say it's so brief since I've been back in '87. That's over 30 years. But prior to that, it was a small amount of time. But the first thing I want you to do is listen to Harrisburg historian Caleb Jackson. And we're going to be asking some questions and dealing with this wonderful home community of ours, Harrisburg. Caleb Jackson.
Golden opportunity presents itself. Hi, it's good to see you and hear from you again. I'm Richard James, and this is the Richard James Show. Well, we have a real pleasure today. We have a gentleman here by the name of Caleb Jackson. I have dubbed him Harrisburg's resident historian, particularly when it comes to the African American community. Welcome, my brother.
Welcome.
And
Welcome,
it's just good to hear and see you again. I haven't seen you in a while. I haven't interacted with you. It's been a while. But you know, brothers and sisters, there's an old gospel song that goes, "Give me my flowers while I'm living, so I can smell them." This gentleman that's with me has more information and knowledge, particularly about the history of our African American community, than anyone I know. His mind is a warehouse of knowledge and information. And I'm going to start out by having Brother Jackson, Caleb, if you don't mind my calling you that.
Yes, do that.
To introduce himself to you. And rather than my doing it and not presenting it in total, tell us something about Caleb Jackson and the Jackson family and its history in the town of Harrisburg.
Well, Brother James, as I said, it's indeed a pleasure to be on your show and to talk about Harrisburg, because that's what I love to do. Just talk about Harrisburg. Anywhere, anytime, I'm ready to talk about Harrisburg. And one of the reasons I know so much about Harrisburg is because I've been in Harrisburg 90 years.
Yes,
This year, my 90th year in Harrisburg. I was born in Easter Sunday, 1930.
Okay.
And my father had a barber shop on Aberdeen Street, in Aberdeen and Strawberry.
Okay.
Now, Aberdeen is still there, but there's some other buildings there now. But that's where we lived until about 1934.
Okay.
And then we moved. The dad moved the barber shop to 1002 North 6th Street, which we'll talk about a little later, because that building is still there, and that's being rehabbed by the McCoy brothers. And that's going to be a site of the future Jackson Square. It's a Jackson Square project that
Wonderful.
historians are doing. And we'll talk about that a little later. But growing up in Harrisburg, I attended the elementary school in Bose. That building is still standing. It's now an apartment house. Then in those days, we had junior high school, Camp Curtin. For junior high, the ages of grades 7 through 9. And then on to William Penn. And of course, I always liked history from about 4th grade, or history and mathematics
Okay.
are my two favorite subjects. And sometimes I get to talking about, really to talk about the history of mathematics. I'm not going to do that today. We're going to talk about African American history. But I'm equally encouraged, and I equally study math history and African American history. And I suppose that's because growing up in Harrisburg, at one time there were what they call number writers. Now,
I remember those.
number writers. Now the lotto that we see now, that's legal. Every day about 7 o'clock, they pull numbers, have air blow balls out of a jar with numbers on, and they have a payoff. Well, years ago when I was young, about 14 and 15, they had street numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And number writers went around writing numbers, and you could pay, if you paid $5.49 for 1 cent, you win $6, which was a lot of money. So it became an interest in following the number. Every day, people would tell me, well, what's the number? What's the number? So we used to, we're indoctrinated to numbers, and it's something that we just enjoy. And after high school, well, you want me to talk about living in Harrisburg or going to the Army or Lincoln University or
all that? Just give us a little overview of that, and then I have some questions.
Okay, good.
But I want to hear. I just learned some things with that quickie that you just did. So you were in the Army and you attended Lincoln.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, when I graduated in 1948, I worked and during the summer, I would sometimes work for Dr. Crampton, who was a well-known physician in Harrisburg. And I would go down and sweep his pavement, take a hose and wash it down and polish his brass doorknobs. And I think about that even now. He talk about the spread of germs. So he was, being a physician, he was concerned about everybody coming in touching the doorknob. So every day he had me or somebody shines, polishes doorknobs. So about August of 48, he said, Caleb, would you like to go to college? And I said, I never really thought about it. And he said, well, what did you study in high school? I said, study academics. He said, I can get you a scholarship to Lincoln University.
Wow.
I said, no, you got to go down and take a test. So I told my mother about it. So we got together. I went down to Lincoln and took a test. And I was admitted. Now, talk about politics of the day. See, have you ever heard of Harvey Taylor?
Oh God! Yeah, who was Harvey? But he was the kingpin.
Harvey Taylor was the kingpin of the Republican Party.
Yes, he was.
And he could give out senatorial scholarships.
Right, because he was a senator also.
Yes, he was state senator.
Yeah.
State senator. And so what happened, it seems like he only had so many to give out. So Dr. Clinton said, well, Harvey Taylor, all the ones he has, he's given out. But don't worry, we'll do something else. We'll get you one from the West Shore. So they got me one from the West Shore.
Interesting.
By a man named Wade.
Okay.
Who the bridge is named for now. The Wade Bridge, Senator Wade from Cumberland County, he gave me a scholarship to Lincoln University.
Wow.
Which is probably really illegal, but in those days, I didn't live in Cumberland County before.
Right.
But they're able to do it. And Lincoln was fun. Now, this was when Lincoln was an all-boys school. And Lincoln was tough, especially for freshmen.
Mm.
I mean, all the freshmen had to wear a green tie.
Okay.
The first semester, you wore a green tie. You could not go in the front door of any building.
Mm.
You had to go into the back door. It's just certain things they did for freshmen to indoctrinate them to a discipline. And that's where I first really learned a discipline to study. It wasn't like in high school where you study and you could sort of do what you want to do. At Lincoln, they had discipline. And most of our professors were from Europe. Our math professor was Dr. Gwenzweig from the University of Berlin. Some of these, there was some of the Jews that escaped Nazi Germany, fleeing Hitler, and they came to America, and a lot of them settled. They didn't want to go to a big college. They settled at a lot of small colleges.
Mm.
And my friend Dorothy King from New York wrote a play about that a few years ago. She wrote a play about that.
Yeah, I know Dorothy.
Yeah, she wrote a play about the Jewish professors from Europe that settled at black colleges. And of course, they were really good teachers. Now at Lincoln, one of my friends was Donald Reed from Middletown. Okay. And he's related to all the Reeds in Middletown. Mayor Reed's brother. Now, not Harrisburg.
Oh, that's right. But Donald is the doctor.
Donald's a doctor.
That's right.
Donald and I were freshmen together.
What fantastic.
And a lot of times on weekends, we want to come home, so we would hitchhike from Lincoln to Quarryville. And we got to Quarryville, we'd catch a bus and get to Lancaster, and Donald's father would drive from Middletown to Lancaster and pick us up.
Wow.
So that was a fun. Yeah. So I was in Lincoln for a year and a half, and I was exempt, but I dropped out of Lincoln the second semester, and I was picked up in the draft. And I went to the Army, And that was the first time I really saw discrimination. I'll never remember.
Remember what year that was?
1951.
Okay.
Korean War started.
Right.
They drafted, we were drafted. In fact, my mother, I still have the article. We were sworn in down in front of the courthouse.
Okay.
Taken to New Cumberland and actually sworn into the Army. They were taken to Fort Meade. Got to Fort Meade, Maryland, and they tap you on the shoulders. The whites went one way, the blacks went another. And that's the first time I can ever recall seeing that type of discrimination. So what they were doing, they were organizing an all-black battalion of engineers. And it took about 2 weeks at Fort Belvoir. Every day, different blacks would come in from Philadelphia, from New Jersey, from South Carolina, to this rendezvous, as you might say, where they were getting the soldiers together. And once we reached about 1,000 troops, then we were sent to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, for training, and the 94th Combat Engineers. And that was one of the last all-black units, because President Truman
Yes, sir.
was desegregating the Army.
That's right.
But it was like a blessing in disguise, because we were an all-black unit. He would not send us to Korea. He said, I'm not going to send any more all-black units intact to Korea, because we're desegregating this thing. And they were desegregated in Korea. So the 24th Infantry was in Korea. They were desegregated. So our unit, we just sat at Fort Belvoir for 2 years. Now, because I was so good in math, being an engineer outfit, the first thing they said to me, well, we're going to make you a surveyor.
Okay.
So they sent me to surveying school at Fort Belvoir. And that was interesting, because that's the first time. Now, surveying is basically trigonometry. But that was the first time I heard of Benjamin Banneker.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Because these professors were talking about,
Benjamin.
Fort Belvoir is about 20 miles below Washington, D.C. And our professors at the engineering school, surveying school, were telling us about Banneker, who helped lay out the city of Washington.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Yes, he did.
So that was an experience. We talked about that this black man, late in life, started studying mathematics, and he was with the Ellicotts in Maryland and some others. And when Pierre LaFont started to lay out the city of Washington, he quit for some reason, and Benjamin Banneker finished the job.
Right.
So Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, is 10 miles square. Not 10 square miles, it's 10 miles on each square. It's a square, 10 miles on each side. And that's why he named it the District of Columbia.
That is absolutely wonderful.
So coming back from the Army, after 2 years in the Army, I came back and I worked with my dad for a while. My dad had the hotel. My dad had a barber shop.
Give me your dad's name again.
The name of my dad's?
Your dad. What's your dad's name?
That's same Caleb Jackson.
Oh, same as you. Okay, so
Same
you
as me, I'm
junior. That makes sense. You junior, so you got to be senior. Sorry about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So around 1945, so my dad was in World War I, and he was in Georgia.
Wow.
And he said he was drafted into the Army, and he didn't go overseas, but he came north. He had a chance to come a little bit north for training. And then after World War I, he saw the big boom. People call it the Roaring 20s.
Okay.
So he and some other people, around 1945, they sort of knew the United States was going to win the war, or the Allies were going to win.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah, the Allies were going to win. It's just a matter of time. So everybody was positioning themselves for what we're going to do after the war.
Right.
So then he had this idea of opening up a hotel, and he applied for a hotel. I bought a building on 1208 North 6th Street, and he had a little trouble getting a loan. But here again, his friend Dr. Crampton helped him get a loan to have it renovated into a hotel. And Then he applied for a liquor license. And of course, you apply for a liquor license, you have to be bonded.
Mhm.
And if you get an insurance company, especially an insurance company like Harvey Taylor and Son Insurance Company,
Mhm.
you're pretty sure getting your license. So it's politics. So
Yeah.
April 1946, the Jack's Hotel opened up.
Okay.
And I have pictures of it, and it was very nice. It was beautiful inside. It had a cocktail lounge, had a full equipped kitchen, and he convinced a chef named Dr. What do you call it? Not Dr. Chef Brown.
Okay.
Chef Brown, who was Russell Royster's grandpa. I don't know if you ever knew Russell Royster.
Yes. Yes.
Anyway, Chef Brown had retired. He was a chef in one of the major hotels down, like the Penn Harris in
Right.
Harrisburg. So he opened up the kitchen.
I understand that at the Jackson Hotel, that a lot of African American performers and well-known celebrities would stay at the Jackson Hotel.
See, now here's what we're going to talk about. The Jackson Hotel, Jack's Hotel, and the Jackson House are two different places.
Oh, okay.
Two different. The Jackson House is still there at 1206 North 6th Street. But the restaurant is open now. The restaurant's open. The Jackson House itself is boarded up. Now the McCoy brothers are going to renovate that. That Jackson House is still standing.
Okay.
And that was operated by German Jackson, who was not related to my dad was from Georgia. German Jackson was from Virginia.
Okay.
And German Jackson was the head doorman at the Penn Harris, but he and his wife operated this rooming house, as you call it. So I was called
Like
the
a bread and
Jackson
breakfast
House.
kind of thing? Yeah.
My dad's hotel was 2 blocks further up 6th Street
Okay.
Okay.
at 1208, and that was torn down. So a lot of people that don't remember the two, they get them confused, and I understand that because they're both Jacksons, and they both look a little bit alike, and they both were fabulous places. Both had great food and so forth. So they both were well known, and both of them were in what they call the Green Book.
Okay.
Now you know the movie, The Green Book, just won the Academy
Oh,
Award.
yeah. I just saw it. That was a wonderful movie.
Yeah, well, the Green Book came out in the 1930s, but my dad's barbershop was listed in the Green Book. Now, one thing about the Green Book, you had to pay to be listed. So a lot of black enterprises didn't get listed. It wasn't a big fee, but you had to pay a nominal fee for the advertisement. And it usually paid off because if people were traveling and they saw your name listed, if they come to Harrisburg, they saw Jackson House, Jack's Hotel, Jack's Barbershop, Harriet's Beauty Parlor, things like that. So you knew there were places you could go and you could receive a good service and nobody is,
also.
there's no discrimination or anything.
Right.
Because people traveling, they basically are not looking for trouble. They don't want to get involved in anything. They want to go to a place where they know it's safe.
That's right.
And it's been recommended. So that worked.
Now, during this particular period, were we allowed to stay as African Americans at Penn Harris and other hotels?
No. Yet we worked there.
Okay.
Like the Penn Harris had a room called the Plantation Room.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was.
And we have John Scott's book. He has a picture of the women, the waitresses that worked in the Plantation Room.
Okay.
And they all had these what do you call the thing? The women put on the slaves put on their head.
Bonnets or whatever.
Yeah. Head wraps. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was the Plantation Room.
So the Jackson with segregation, the Jackson Hotel gave us a nice place to stay.
Yes. And because of that and some others, so therefore they made money. They had good business because blacks could not go to these major hotels.
Now, did you have performance? Did you have music there at the hotel? Or
Yes. Yes.
do you remember some of any of the celebrities that
Well, I
came
tell
through?
you, a particular one, I remember Nat King Cole.
Oh my goodness.
Now he was at the Forum, but he stayed at my dad's hotel, and I remember him eating in the restaurant part, and people talking about that King Cole was there. Another one was Dinah Washington.
Goodness. Okay. Big name.
I remember seeing her a couple times. Little Walter.
Okay.
You ever hear of Little Walter? He had a record called My Babe. My
My
Babe Don't Stand No Teasing.
Oh yeah, my baby. Oh
Yeah.
sure. Okay.
And then they had another one we had, and some of these people had left autographed pictures for us, but somehow I lost them over the years. Sugar Child Robinson was there.
Okay.
Sugar Child Robinson was at the Forum. He was like a 78-year-old prodigy.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think he's still on YouTube. You can pull up some of the clips of Sugar Child Robinson.
Right.
He played the piano. And he played jazz and not so much jazz, but blues.
You know,
Sugar Child Robinson.
Harrisburg also has a local legacy of great musicians and artists and you know that kind of thing. I can remember Toby Young used to have shows. He would work with if I can recall with Lawson, and they would bring people in. But the forerunner was the Jackson Hotel where people lived there. But so the town has a history.
Now we have a little book on the history of jazz. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I'm not. I got you. Jazz in Harrisburg.
It was published about 5 years ago. With Central Pennsylvania Friends of Jazz got together, and I was with them. Jimmy Wood and Waters, the trumpeter, and some of the old jazz guys. They sat down and they put this book together on the history of jazz, basically from about 1946 to 1960. And we have pictures at Lawson's. Pictures of Lawson had a lot of big groups in.
Oh yes, he did. I was right there. I never drank, but I love the music. I sit up. People think I'm high. I'm high off of Sprite, but I but I come in for the music. I will never forget Lawson. Never forget Lawson.
Yes. Now, Lawson had two places now. So, what year did you come to Harrisburg?
66. I know about the one up on 7th Street.
That's the second one.
Okay, where's the first one?
It was further down 7th Street. It was at 7th and Broad.
Wow. Okay.
See, that was torn down, and then he built the other one up above Raleigh Street.
I knew about the one.
But the first one he had a larger room in the back for bands.
Okay.
And a bigger stage.
Okay. Yeah, I remember groups like Samson and Delilah.
I have a Samson and Delilah poster at my house now.
Fantastic! I love that group. But I love music, and participated in a lot of things. And I had a little television show.
Yes.
Milton Schaap had a on the cable franchise, and so I had a local show. As a matter of fact, I would have entertainers that would come on and perform on my show. I had people like Rufus Thomas. You know, if you remember the Greasy Chicken and other folks. But Harrisburg has such a rich legacy. But Kev, you've really been involved in a whole host of different things over the years. As a matter of fact, you ran for public office and you held public office.
Let me say one thing about music.
Go ahead. Let's go back to me. Okay, that's fine.
My mother sent me to play clarinet, take clarinet lessons. You know what? The only thing my dad never wanted me to be a musician.
Okay.
I mean, they argued over that, and he stopped me. He said, "I do not want you to be." He said, "A musician's life is too tough."
You got a point there.
And he saw people. He said, "That's a life I don't want for you," and so I stopped playing. I played clarinet, which would lead to a saxophone and
Yeah.
so forth. But
Well, he's right, because the folks that I know that perform, I mean, there's things like drugs and
I said you get into
and
a lot
also
of things.
and a lot of
Unfortunately.
times poor management, people that cheat you, you know, that have you perform, and
Yes.
sometimes you never get paid.
Yes.
I mean, there's a whole history of things. But you have a history of giving back and doing and servicing the community in many ways. And if I could skip over some things, you also been heavily involved in education.
Yes, they started running for office. Yes, when I retired, I worked at the post office. When I came back, like I said, I worked at the post office in 1955,
Okay.
and then I retired in 1990.
Okay.
And I became a supervisor at the post office.
Okay.
Good job. But then I started to run for office, and I ran for school board.
Right.
And the first time I ran, I didn't make it. Now, and one of the reasons, a lot of the people told me I waited too late to say I'm going to run. The politicians sort of look ahead, and they will endorse you. The endorsements I could have gotten, they said, well, we already endorsed somebody else.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then the second time, I got in office. Second
Right.
time, 2 years later, I ran and I made it to office. And I was on the school board from 1992 to 2000, when I stopped and went back to work for the census for a year and a half. And I came back to the school board. And I was on there till 2010.
Now, weren't you on the a group after the school board of school district was eventually came under the state,
Yes.
and but
That's when Mayor Reed took over in 2000.
right, but you held a position then in regards to the
Right. I was on that, what they call the Board of Control.
right. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Board of Control. And the history of the school district, well, right before that, when I was on the board, was when we had that horrible middle school. Now that was one of the worst ideas. And I actually went and talked, you know, when we start experimenting, we have to ask ourselves, what are we really doing?
Right.
And I talked to former school board members that were there back in the late 60s and 70s. When they built a middle school, they built a school for ages 6, 7, and 8 with no walls. And I asked them, how could you possibly think this is going to work? Well, everybody said this is something new. They'll see what's going on in this class, and they'll be quiet. What doesn't work?
No.
So what they had to do was put petitions up, and the whole school just never worked. So eventually, and that's what 1994 or 5 is when we tore down the middle school and went back and renovated some of our other schools and made other schools middle schools.
Yeah.
And then they also, the Board of Control is when we built Sci Tech
Right.
for students. In fact, first we started the Math Science Academy, and I was the one that really pushed that.
Right.
Start the Math Science Academy, and that was for grades like 5 through 8. So we identified students early on that had ability in math and science and a few other things, and put them in a special place. And then most of those students went on to Sci Tech. But there was also, because a lot of students are late bloomers,
Yeah.
so we have it set up so even somebody in the 8th or 9th graders, if they start to bloom late, they can still go to Sci Tech.
Right.
And one of the things I'm always proud of is we have provision. A lot of people don't know this, but if you graduate from Sci Tech in Harrisburg, you can go to Harrisburg University and pay no tuition.
Oh, well, that's wonderful.
Now, a lot of our students
Particularly.
don't take advantage of that because being young people, they want to get out of Harrisburg.
Right.
So the rest of the girls, for some reason, when they graduate from high school, they don't want to go to school. They want to go to another place. They want to go to another city, which is okay. But if they want to go to Harrisburg University, they can go and pay no tuition. So if they live in Harvard, so it's set up that if a student has ability, they can get a college education basically through the Harrisburg School Board, through the Harrisburg School District.
One.
And
We
I'm
are
very,
going to move
very
it, move ahead, move ahead. We have another video that we want to show, but that'll give you a taste of the interview with Caleb Jackson. And you can always go online and lift up on Facebook and lift up the entire interview. I'm looking forward to getting Caleb Jackson back on the show again. 90 years old. You can tell that his mind is just as sharp as it ever was. But so many of the contributions that Caleb Jackson has made in this community, a lot of people have forgotten. One thing that he was really instrumental in is trying to put an African American museum in the city of Harrisburg. And we were killed by other politicians, but I'm still hopeful that one day that we'll be able to do that. But the man who led that, helped to lead that adventure, along with Eric Smith and along with John Scott and many, and also Miss Jackie Penn, we fought hard, and I was a part of it to do that. But we want to thank, he's a jewel, he's a treasure, and we will do it again. I've got to contact him to see if I can get him back on my show to do some things. And time is marching on, so we got to remember that factor. The next interview, next video, and we're going to try to put in as much of it as we can, was an interview. My daughter, who has a master's degree from Goddard and a master's degree from Shippensburg and a bachelor's degree in creative writing, was currently a professor and working at a charter school in the city of Harrisburg, formerly worked at the Central Pennsylvania College. And we want to lift up now an interview between Maria and myself. Roll the video. Thank you.
Hi students, how are you? I am your Professor Maria Chow, and I'm really pleased to have a special guest with me today. We have been talking the last couple of weeks about the civil rights movement and the Black arts movement, and my guest today was very active in those movements and is an artist himself, a poet, a singer, a community organizer, dancer, drummer, so many things. So without further ado, I introduce you to my father, Richard James. Hi, Dad.
Hi, how
Hi,
you doing?
sweetie.
Can I call you Maria? Or should I say Professor Chow?
You can say Maria.
Okay, you can say that. Well, it's pleased to be here, and be able to talk about arts, particularly in the African American community, the development of arts, and also to talk about the struggle, the life struggle for liberation and freedom. That really began with the African American community and then lit a fire throughout the nation where other people began to deal with issues and stand up and be counted. But it's an interesting and a very important issue to discuss, so I appreciate the invitation of being here.
Wonderful. And you're right. We talked about in one of the PowerPoints that this was a borning struggle, meaning that it affects not only the African American community, but then later we had the Red Power movement and the if you're down with the brown for the Chicanos and others took the lessons they learned from civil rights and Black Power movements to fight for their own freedom and equality.
Yeah, that's very true, Maria, and we must not forget women, the feminist movement, because people don't understand that at some point women were considered property, and women were not, and I'm talking about all women, I'm not just talking about African American women, were not even afforded the right to vote in this country until after the turn of the century, and continue to struggle
to try to break through the glass
ceiling, where you begin to see each other as human beings and recognize the character of the person, recognize their talents, who they are, rather than their ethnicity, rather than their sex or their sexual orientation, to move this country toward humanizing people, in a
realistic kind of way. Yeah.
Well, tell me, can you tell the students a little bit about why were the arts an important part of the movement? Was it just something fun to do, or how was it a part of the movement?
Okay, that's a good question. Who are the artists?
Mm-hmm.
And what constitutes being an artist? And by definition, what is art? When you think about it, people who are creative, who reach inside of their own humanity, who they are, their center core, and are able to communicate that to the world, that's an artist. So when I think of artists, and then I reflect upon the civil rights struggle, I think of people like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.,
who was indeed an artist. He was a noted poet. He was an author. He was very, very creative. But he had an internal genius and sensitivity and concern
about the issues of other people. And then when I look at some of the other civil rights people, for example, like Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson was indeed, in terms of his intellect, probably the genius of the civil rights movement. For example, in terms of his art, you may have heard of The Emperor Jones, which was a great movie, a great play. That was Paul Robeson. When you think of the Bassano voice, Paul Robeson had a tremendous voice. He was indeed great as an artist, but he also, during the 40s and during the 50s,
was the most noted, the most significant leader for liberation within this country. So when we take a look at both movements, the so-called art movement, the so-called civil rights movement, then we see a blending of the two. And I'll just mention one other, a man
that says, I wear the mask that grins and smiles, that hides my cheeks and hides my eyes, but let the world think otherwise. I wear the mask. Okay. Great poet, noted poet, but a man also concerned with change within the Black community.
Yes. So poetry, film, we've talked a lot about music.
Yes.
And also the chapter that the students have just read is about theater in the Black Arts Movement and how it was organic. Can you talk a little bit about that? How it kind of came from the people?
There was a
great playwright
by the name of
Leroy Jones, noted on and off Broadway. He changed his name
to Amir Baraka.
Amir Baraka, yes.
Amir Baraka was from the city of New Jersey. Great playwright. Established as one of the most renowned African-American playwrights of his day.
And geared his life to bringing about social change. A young lady by the name of Mae Jackson, who back in the 60s was a noted and great poet. She wrote a choral poem. Can I poet with you, Leroy? Can I poet for a little while? Can I poet with you, Leroy? And that was put on as an off-Broadway play.
Was it called Can I Poet With You?
Yes.
Oh, I have
Can
to
I poet with you? Can I poet for a little while? It was, renowned, well known
During that particular era. But
what I'm trying to say is
the poets, the playwrights, the artists, the civil rights activists
were in a sense one and the same. E.W. Du Bois.
W.B.
Thank you for the question. W.E. Du Bois. Thank you for that. great author,
great civil rights leader, created the NAACP.
He died in Ghana, Africa. He
Was working on the Encyclopedia Africanus. Great writer.
poet. He wrote a book called Philadelphia Negro. He wrote many, many, many works. And also was, during his day, during the turn of the century, was the most pronounced leader of the civil rights struggle.
Right. And first African American at Harvard as well.
Yes.
W.E.B. Du Bois. Yes. So many different arts and theater. I read or I heard Sonia Sanchez speak and say that they would just get kids from the neighborhood and say, "Hey, come here," and give them a script and paint something on the brick wall and then do a play right there in the street.
I can get lost in Sonia Sanchez and talking about Sonia Sanchez. I don't know of any
more sensitive, more creative leader of the civil rights struggle, and thank God she is still with us today.
Yes.
Sonia Sanchez had her own voice. I mean, no one has captured how Sonia writes. She has
her own style, own presentation. I was blessed to become a friend of Sonia's during the struggle. I was a member of an organization called Black Communicators, and this was communication people from the Northeast, basically, and who came together to fight some of the racism and bigotry in broadcasting.
And we also supported artists like Sonia Sanchez and Nikki Giovanni and some of the other Reeds and some of the others. But Sonia Sanchez continues to make an impression, not only on art and theater, but also on civil rights liberation.
Definitely. I had the honor to meet her a few times, but to speak with her in February, I saw her, and I was telling her about my project, the American Griot Project, my oral history project, and she said she'd be happy to speak with me about that because she looked me in my eyes, she said, "You people have to take up the struggle."
Yes.
She said, "This is not new, we've seen this before, but it's your turn now."
Yes.
And that was so powerful to hear from her. She was amazing.
Yes, she has.
She is amazing.
Her ability to communicate, her humility in context with her greatness, her ability to reach out and touch someone, to be able to share and really appreciate someone in spite of her own greatness. She doesn't put herself up here.
She really doesn't.
She doesn't.
Everybody's sister or brother.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
Yes, she is.
Well, lastly, can you tell us a little bit about your part in the arts and some things you have published and what you did during this movement?
Well, I have a brother named Samuel James.
Mm-hmm.
Sam was indeed
An artist. He was a creative.
creative artist. He was a wood sculptor. He was a painter, and he was a poet. And I was his baby brother. And I used to tell around him, reading his books, trying to
Mimic his artwork. And that
got me started into the whole arts thing. My father was a strong
civil rights movement person. He was a believer in Paul Robeson. And he always
always talk about it. Paul Robeson was here, things would be different. So that ignited my interest in it. So I spent a lifetime doing two things. One, being
creative. I dabbled in painting and drawing and art. Constantly writing poetry. I've been blessed to have published 6 books. Most of them, 4 of them were
self-published. The other 2 were published, by a publisher out of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. But for me, the blending of the art and the movement happened naturally. One thing that we did when I was very, very young, myself and a young brother by the name of James Theodore Reed, we call him Teddy. We created the Chester Repertoire Theater. And out of that, we would pull together whites, blacks, people of different ethnic groups, and we would do performances. And much of our topic matter had to do with our condition, our liberation, as well as love and romance and that kind of thing. One of our greatest artists was by a man by the name of Tom Jackson. Tom Jackson was one of the most creative artists that I've seen before and since. He's the elder brother of Eric Jackson, who is a local minister, activist, artist, beautiful human being. So for me, art and civil rights walk hand in hand, for a very long time.
And I would be remiss not to say something about our dear friend Toby Young and what he contributed during that time period with the radio and Soulville Records.
Toby Young, I think of two things, sensitivity and strength. Toby indeed was one of the strongest, most willful human beings that I ever met, and one of the most sensitive. He was an ex-veteran. When I first came to Harrisburg in 1966, Toby was very, very active in music. He also was a great singer. Toby would sing. And Toby had a record shop, I think it was on Regina Street in Harrisburg. He also had a radio program called Echoes of Glory on WKBO, on radio. He befriended me. He and his sister Vi befriended me early on, and Toby and I worked together. Let me just mention one incident, one thing that happened, not to get too verbose. Toby was a good friend of James Brown. James Brown used to talk about on a good foot, Brown called the Godfather of Soul.
Yes.
And he had a number of concerts, particularly he would have them at the Zembo Moss in different places. And we had a problem because there were constant fights between different sections of the city in Harrisburg, between South Harrisburg and Uptown Harrisburg and the Hill. And I worked closely with the gangs. I had community workers, and I had developed a martial arts class, a boxing team, a basketball team. And so Toby came to me and said, man, he said, I'm having problems with these kids tearing the place up. Can we get together? I said, yeah, let's do it. So I called a gang summit.
Interesting.
And we got the gangs from all over town. We set them down with Toby. And we talked to him. We talked about the shows and how we want to bring entertainment to the city, but we can't continue to bring entertainment if you're going to tear things up. I said, now, you guys, you gentlemen, are the leaders in your community, and it's up to you to keep it secure. So what we want to do is to pull together a team of folks, and we're going to give you special jackets that you can wear, and we want you to provide security for our shows. Are you want to do that? Yeah, right on, man. I can do that. I'm with that. We pull together. We have to create a pact now. We have to be able to trust each other. So we got to work together. So if there's a disturbance, and we come together and we're able to quell that. But we want people to see you, the leaders, the top guys, the top dogs, that they're standing saying that we want to make this show work. Toby and I worked together on that. We put that together, and it worked. I emceed a couple of the James Brown programs. I was quite a hand back in those days. And but it worked, and it also helped to bring these guys together to start communicating. We had boxing tournaments in which we used to be a pal that was down on 3rd Street, in which we would box. But the idea of opening up communication and showing a little love for these guys, love and respect, and that helped to do it. But I could go on and on and on. I love Toby because he's worthy to be loved. He's a man that emanates progress all his life. He was recognized in the Gospel Hall of Fame and admitted to the Gospel Hall. He and Olin Harris.
We're coming down to the end
Olin was the one
of the show. We're coming down to the end of the show. We just have a few minutes left. Again, we didn't quite complete it, but it was just about finishing. You can go online, go on YouTube, and see the entire the interview in its entirety. And I've done several shows with my daughter Maria. She's good. She's excellent. And we could turn the tables on her because she's done a lot in the community herself, taking after her mother, who was also a community activist. I want to thank you again for tuning in. Had a wonderful time at Kwanzaa. We were able to bring a lot of art there. We're still located down in Lebanon, 35 South H Street. We're still lifting up our African art. We have lots of masks. We have lots of drums. We have lots of original oil paintings from West Africa. And we want to invite you to come and see us. And we will enjoy visiting with you. Here's our stand. You can see there's our African clothing, African paradise. There's our Black Santa Clauses. They're ready for Christmas, by the way. Hey, there they are. Then you see from our masks from the Ivory Coast. But if you're looking for that special gift, for that special someone that you love, and there's a 4-foot giraffe there that will have a very, very reasonable price. You won't beat our prices, and you won't beat the quality of the work that we have. And we need your support. We like for folks to visit and say hello, but if you're going to visit, please come and make some kind of purchase to keep us in business, okay? And so at any rate, again, thank you for tuning in. Much love to you and all our audience, and thank God that we're still here. And again, I want to lift up the Gaskins and the wonderful job they did with Kwanzaa. Looking forward to doing some more things with them. God bless. May heaven smile upon you and be gracious unto you and give you favor. Thank you so much. This is Richard James signing off on the Richard James Show. Take care.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Richard James Show. Our African and our African American programs are set up to educate you on what's going on in this world. We thank you for taking out the time to listen. Let us hear from you sometime also. So this is your neighbor and your friend signing off. Until I see you again next week and hear from you again next week. So long. God bless.